Okay, I'm having a hard time. I'm looking inside and questioning something that I said, that I talked about in my PhD, which is how I use power and how I use my role as a facilitator and the power that this role has, and how I eventually, if I'm successfully allowing people to rebel. This concerns an online workshop and the online workshops in which normally not normally, like since the pandemic, I passionately proposed and carried out a small exhibition of the projects inside the platform. And I would invite the other workshop participants to see those projects. And this was something that everybody liked. Everybody had a very good experience. It was triple work for me, but it made me realize that while in the live workshops we couldn't actually manage to exhibit the projects, organizing an exhibition would have been too expensive in terms of time, in terms of money, in terms of everything, and I didn't manage to do that. But I've always wanted that people would show their projects. And in the platform this was possible by making these books. But of course I'm a contemporary artist and I work with the contemporary art rigor in storytelling, and most of my participants, the SPEX participants, are not contemporary artists, and therefore they don't have the skills to build a project, a narrative, even because they are so immersed in their autobiographical story and work. It is difficult for them to build a narrative that suggests some sort of evolution. And therefore what I have proposed is that I would design the books, or at least what I have done is to ask them to propose a narrative, and from their idea I would design a contemporary art book. This, in contemporary art, it's absolutely normal, because a curator will say no, no, yes, yes, and will decide what the artist is going to exhibit, except from some cases in which, of course, they can work together, but this happens so many times because the curator doesn't have possibly the time. Of course, if the curator does a solo exhibition, the curator will work with the artist because it's one artist. But if the curator is doing a collective show, the curator does not have possibly the time and the energy to work singularly with every author. Of course, a little bit, yes, but of course it depends on the curator, but generally the curator will say, I mean, it has happened to me so many times. And also in my book, But Beautiful, the publisher said, I'm interested in your work, but I want to do the book that I want. And I allowed him to do it. And the same with many other artists that I know. Elina Broderus, for example, told me that she gave all her stuff to a really good graphic designer, and he did a book that she would have never done. And that's totally normal, because another creative process on our work can also give another narrative, perhaps a more universal narrative, perhaps, because we are usually stuck in our own story. So, of course, then in the Italian workshop, I have I have said, well, I have to approve of, so if you want to exhibit the project, I have to approve it. Yeah? Or, like, so it could be that someone has the skills, and there have been some professional photographers who had the skills to construct a book, and this has happened, and actually they did it really well, and perhaps I would propose some changes. I dialogue and propose some changes, but most of the participants didn't have the skills, and most of the participants couldn't manage, because 3 months is not enough to make a narrative with a certain evolution, and with a certain outcome that perhaps it's the future. And you can, when you are in touch with your own story, with your own life, you can't see how it could evolve. But an external creative process could give some hints of this evolution. And being a recoverist, so as someone who has recovered from addiction and so on, and from depression, and giving to recovery, because recovery is a transformation of one's own identity, and therefore it's what recoverists know how to do very well. We know how to reprogram our identity, and therefore whenever I will construct a narrative, I will start with a conflict, and then, like any story has a conflict, and any story will start by presenting the conflict and the characters involved. So, and then there is some sort of resolution, which is not exactly a happy ending, or can be a happy ending, or whatever. But anyhow, there is an internal or an emotional evolution. And this is what I care for, because I think that it's very important that participants realize that they have been through a certain evolution throughout the 3 months of the project, and that we're all evolving all the time. So that is my aim. But also my aim is to present the projects, giving them the maximum value as contemporary art. And that means that anybody, all participants, regardless of their experience in art, can actually produce art, and can produce a photo art book, a photo artist book. Yeah. Of course, we would need 1 whole year for them to learn how to build this narrative, and also for them to take some distance of the work that they have done in order to actually be in the right moment to build this narrative and see the evolution. Nevertheless, an outer creative process, an external creative process is very advisable, because, as I said, it gives perhaps a new vision on that story, and a new vision on the possible future evolutions. Anyhow, what has happened is that some participants, like one in the Italian workshop, last Italian workshop, and have felt as if I was imposing my vision, and therefore it has been something that has disturbed the person. Someone has also suggested, why don't you, if in the future you do a workshop to build the narrative, that could be amazing. And that's a great idea, and I'm going to do that, certainly. But of course, all this, because there has been some discussion and somebody who has felt this, my imposing this on their project and so on, and there has been sort of a discussion, and I am, on every discussion, I am always questioning what I do, how I do it, and of course issues of power. And because of course there are power roles. If I lead a workshop, I'm the workshop leader, and I deal with the platform, so I'm the leader. But at the same time, I have to take into account people's desires, people's needs, and people's needs. And although, of course, I assume, and this is perhaps a mistake, or is it it's something that it should be discussed. I assume that my vision, or a contemporary art vision with the rigor and it's going to give the highest quality and the highest value to the work that they have been doing, and therefore to make the best homage to their experience, and to give value, the best value, the highest value to every single picture, or to the best pictures, or to the most important pictures. Now, of course, the dialogue between myself and the participant is there and can be there. Of course, not many hours, because I've been also very overwhelmed, because this was a plus. But the dialogue is possible. At the same time, yes, I know that all my work and specs, as I said in my PhD, specs should be the power dynamics in specs are reversed constantly, because mainly, well, when I use my studio, I leave the room for the person to take their own self-portraits, and therefore they're collaborative self-portraits. So we are dealing with power, but reversing the roles of power. And in this case, I know that I have been rigid with this, and this has created some discontent. No, how do you say that? Some uneasiness and some anger, perhaps, or I miss the word now. Yeah, people who were not happy at all about this, and despite many of them were very happy to see their projects, to see that their images acquired so much value and they became an artist book. Yeah, but it's a very delicate question, and I know that specs is about power, and the PhD has allowed me to realize, to question how I use power, and to realize that power dynamics must be transparent and they have to be reversed. And they are being reversed. So what I'm saying right now about these things, about the projects and the exhibition and who designs what, this, as I understand it, is something that is telling me that I was rigid, and that I shouldn't be, I should be allowing the power dynamics to be reversed. And therefore, at the same time, I think, well, perhaps these people who were not happy didn't see what I was doing as a gift. But at the same time, I know that my own relationship with power has always been intense and emotional, and sometimes, and I know that I can be imposing mainly, I mean, I've always had, I come from a family who were very much power oriented. But not only my ancestors, but even my sisters. So there has been power relationships all the time. And I have been, or I put myself into the role of the victim, or the one that didn't have power, because I felt vulnerable, and I saw my sisters as very powerful. And I was craving as well to have that power. It is true that psychotherapy has allowed me to see how I was using power, but I have often had issues with this, and therefore I'm trying to find out what is the best way, because of course I think, well, the best would be to have more time during the workshop in order to allow that discussion, yeah, and to not impose, but create a dialogue. And also to be very careful, because I know that if I have been too assertive and too imposing of this decision, this creates conflict. And especially I know that I have issues of power mostly with men, but not only. With some people in general, also women. So perhaps it's with people who are more sensitive to power relationships, or perhaps it's people who are who use assertion quite a lot, and therefore I have a tendency to sort of fight. But I think that, okay, I'm doing this video and this is therapy for me, but I plan to publish it because I think it's very important that power dynamics are transparent and that they can be discussed and reversed. And so, therefore, the idea is that what I would like is, okay, this is a small exhibit of the works that they have produced. I have a difficulty in allowing projects that are not aesthetically like high quality, although of course I'm not a graphic designer, so what I do is only just giving value. What I do is I construct a narrative which allows the conflict to emerge and to be visible, and then allows an evolution, an internal emotional evolution towards a certain ending, and that we go deep into each step so the viewer can live the experience as if it was his or her own. And therefore no distractions, but just total concentration on the internal evolution, yeah. And therefore my aim is to give the maximum value to that, to make a homage to that. So what I see is that it is a sort of gift, how I see it, of course, but perceptions are multiple and personal and subjective. So what to do with those projects or those participants who say, no, I don't want you to do my project, I want to do it myself, you know? How do I convince them? Perhaps it's not an issue of convincing, but it's too short a workshop so as to create the time, allow them the time. Of course, I could actually give them more, right now I know that the instructions to build a project are sort of still not so good. I could improve them a lot, so that, and I could create the last month a dialogue with them about how to make a project, yeah? And how to construct this internal evolution, how to make the project, the conflict visible, how to build up a story so that the viewer goes deep into this, because this is Specs. Of course, there are many ways to do a project, but Specs wants to tell a story so that the viewer will dive deep into this story and will mirror himself or herself in this story. Although we want to make a universal project so that many different people can see other stories, yeah? So we need that people have more preparation to build the projects, yeah? And I need to give better instructions to the project. So this is what I'm learning. And of course, no more imposing, at least not here. I mean, the other issue is the issue of emotional revolution. With the exhibition Emotional Revolution, the idea was, and this could change too because of this, the idea was that we could actually, so the idea first of all was that with Matilde, a graphic designer and artist and a specialist in photo books, that we would work together on each participant's project, and then we would make one chat with the participant after we have sent him or her our proposal or our draft, yeah? And then we would make some changes. But that, I think, it's not enough. Actually, this participant who proposed a workshop, that could be very, very interesting. Like, really to propose a workshop on how to build those projects so that they have the feeling that they have done them and not me, yeah? So this is what I have learned, and thank you all those participants who have objected to this imposition that I didn't realize it was such. And yes, we never finish learning.